from PIX 11. Once again, New York PD, NYPD cops ordered to patrol in uniform prepare for mobilization after Trump indictment. So this was just the end of the last week as it was being announced Trump was going to head to New York. But this has been a consistent story since the announcement of the looming indictment. Before it was confirmed, New York police fully mobilized. Every officer told to be in uniform and get ready. My question is, for what?
You know, what's interesting is we had a reporter.
Are Trump supporters going to go around or what?
We had a reporter out there last week who went out to the courthouse the night of the, with the indictment. I think it was Wednesday. She went out on, or maybe it was Thursday. I don't know. Anyway, she went out and she was talking to some of the cops who were stationed outside the courthouse. And they had all said, they were talking to her about it. And they said that they were told that this wasn't going to happen for like another month. And then all of a sudden they were all called up. They all were told that they had to pull doubles and they had to get out there right away. They were all kind of pissed. They were like, we didn't think this was happening now.
That's also a way to agitate people and that you're just agitating the cops and their families.
That is agitating.
So the way it must be looked at, it's an indictment trying to lead to incitement. This is a direct incitement campaign where they're trying to raise the temperature in the room to try to spark a backlash that they want to be violent. Who is they? The national security state, the deep state, the regime media, because right-wing violence makes the regime more powerful.
I'm at the point where I just don't see how it matters. No one on the right, like the bifurcation of culture in this country is complete. None of us here are swayed by any arguments about right-wing violence. We know what Antifa does. We know that...
I've experienced it.
Absolutely. And for heaven's sake, conservatives don't even want to go around waving flags around peacefully. They barely want to go outside and protest at all, if anything. Some do, but mostly they don't.
That's right.
But the narrative among the left is they truly believe it. So I was at a casino called Maryland Live this past weekend, and I was playing poker with the boys, as I often do and talk about. And the guy to my left said that all of the people on January 6th should be executed.
Oh, my goodness.
No kidding. Like, so someone brought up politics. This is a regular guy. He doesn't know much about politics. He's
executed.
Executed. Not kidding. These
are like grandmas being like, "Oh, look at the pictures."
Well, there were violent guys out
there. There would be a lot of dead federal agents.
Sure, but listen. So there's violence. There's a riot. There's people fighting with cops. I've seen worse at Antifa protests, but I get it. It's at the Capitol. On one side of the building, the doors are open, but the cops people are let in. And I'm talking to this guy because someone brought up the economy, which led to someone bringing up Joe Biden. And you're not supposed to talk politics at these tables because of what happens. And then I asked the guy what he thought. And he was a really funny guy. He was really cool. We were getting along, having a great time, just having fun. Some jokes were made, some fun poker hands. And then when he got into it, he got really angry. And he was just like, those people, what I saw with my own eyes on January 6th, they should all be executed. Every single one of them. That's treason against this country. And I saw what happened. And I was like, well, you hear about what happened on 5/29? And he says, no, what's that? I was like, when the leftists, the far left, they tore the barricades down at the White House, set fire to St. John's Church, firebombed the guard post, and then the Trump was forced into an emergency bunker. And he goes, I don't know I don't know anything about that. And I'm like, that's it right there. This guy was not political. He said he hated all politicians, but the messaging that reaches him is insurrectionists are traitors, and I have no idea what Antifa is.
Yeah. And imagine a new wave of riots called the Trump riots. That's what they want to see bubble up.
But I just can't see it. I can't.
Well, you were the one, Tim, that you think the country would collapse if they remanded him.
But not because people on the right are going to romp around with guns.
That's probably unlikely, yeah.
Very unlikely. The reason I believe that if Donald Trump did not surrender, the country would collapse is because a country only exists based on confidence. It is an abstract idea that tethers people together. You look at other countries where they do not have confidence in the government, you end up with civil war. You end up with corruption, with bribery, etc., and then very little power of the government other than guns. If Donald Trump stayed in Florida and announced to the nation, I do not find these charges to be legitimate. These are it's a political persecution and a witch hunt, so I'm going to completely ignore it. What precedent would be set nationally that New York was powerless to stop someone who committed what they say are felonies, and Florida refuses to extradite?
Yes, so that's two questions. So it's speculation because it's not happening, but it's interesting. First, the precedent would be you file an extradition order. The second is Florida has to choose whether or not to honor it, and they probably would.
You think
they would?
Ron DeSantis?
That's the question. I don't think the governor has all that authority. I don't know how all the particulars work.
He
I think
said
it's,
that he wasn't going to get involved. He was very clear on that.
That's
Can you-
not getting involved and dishonoring a interstate extradition order are two
Interesting.
different things.
Yeah, Pontius
And-
Pilate
and-
didn't get involved with
and-
Jesus'
but, like-
Can you,
Correct.
can you imagine?
Again, this
Florida-
is all speculation,
Sure,
but I
Right,
think
for
it's
sure.
helpful.
But
I think it's
let's just
fascinating.
entertain these two potential outcomes. The extradition order denied. Ron DeSantis saying
Okay.
we're not involved.
Which I think would be a pretty ballsy and cool thing to do. But that's
Absolutely, I
Me too.
completely agree.
Yeah, but-
what does that mean for law enforcement as a
Hold on,
country?
but
But
Tim-
wait, the other scenario I mentioned.
Sure.
Imagine Ron DeSantis saying, "We have no choice. I am hereby ordering state police to Mar-a-Lago to arrest and transport Trump against his will to New York."
That would be insane.
Right. So-
Exactly, but that's what would
Well,
have to happen.
Hold on. We have a precedent of a couple things. So the idea of a state or a locality saying that other people's laws don't apply to us is not new.
Yeah.
California's doing it right now.
California's doing it with the gender stuff.
Vermont is
And
trying to do it in South
Los
New York.
Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Chicago, Boston, Philadelphia are all sanctuary cities where they defy federal law and don't work federal agents. So that's not a perfect example, but this idea of blue states and blue cities carving out their kind of own place to, play, if you will. So that's one argument. The second thing is what would happen in a standoff between a former president and Florida state troopers. It'd be impossible to
My
know.
goodness,
The,
that
the,
would
the
be so
question, The question
crazy.
would be what would be Trump's end goal, which is why Trump is going to New York. Because the reason why Trump is in New York is he sees massive upside to this because Alvin Bragg is doing what the other DAs decided not to do. He's raising money, he's getting points in the polls, and Donald Trump is now is now being positioned as the martyr of the American right.
Yep.
And
that is so wild.
and being the martyr is incredibly popular.
And
martyrdom is a way to win popularity.
And what do you think the American left is thinking about it?
Depends who you're talking to. Mark Elias or your average crazy person in Brooklyn?
They're cheering for it.
Well, yeah, Mark Elias is probably not cheering for it. That's a separate issue. He's much more strategic
Well, that's
than
the
that.
question
Right,
about if the
right.
National Democratic Party is
Yes.
pro this.
The
or not.
average Trump derangement syndrome Democrat is saying, finally.
Joy Behar on The
Of
View
course
is
they
all
are.
into it.
But these people are savages, and they're never going to stop in their bloodthirsty quest for revenge.
And that's my point. We have two completely bifurcated worldviews and cultures.
Yeah.
One that is calling for injustice, and one that is saying it's good that Trump turned himself into injustice. It makes no
Well,
sense.
no, I'm
This
not
is-
saying.
yeah.
I see it both ways. So, define the injustice. You have to have the ends in mind, right? Your final and formal cause is developed, and I don't think that would have been necessarily prudent for Trump to say you got to go send the troopers after me. It would have felt very like George Wallace-y, 1960s or 70s. Now, having Florida stand up and have the entire Florida state troopers stand down against an extradition order, that would have been interesting. But what I think does need to happen, and the only mature response that I've called for quite some time, is Republican DAs and Republican AGs need to start indicting and investigating members of the Democrat crime family. One that we can all agree on is fraudulent is the BLM criminal enterprise that materially benefited with $100 million in the summer of 2020, and they've been untouched.
Wasn't Act Blue being used to facilitate donations to some of these organizations?
Correct. Yeah, and Act Blue is a harder case to make, but we can say just with Black Lives Matter Global Network, with Patrisse Cullors, we now know there was material charitable fraud under any sort of reading.
She was buying all those houses. And
Yeah,
stuff.
$6 million mansion in
Yeah.
Malibu for a content creators
And
thing.
the money went missing, I guess.
And the money
Yeah.
went
Let me
missing.
pull up
and-
these sources.
And yeah, you go just
to make sure.
fact check me on all of it, right?
There was a bunch of that
She has a multiple real estate empire, right? She also paid her boyfriend, now husband, for security services for a healthy sum. You could fact check me on that. It was quite a lot. Yeah, NBC News is not what
Yeah.
I would use as your.
No, but,
it's
also
just
a
buried.
variety.
That's why it's just going to take you more time to find the numbers. But-
BLM leaders condemn allegations of mismanaged funds.
Okay, that's
Well,
a word salad headline. They're
no, of
condemning
course.
their own
Sure,
mismanagement.
but it was even reported in. It was even
I
reported.
condemn
in,
my crime.
Here's
So-
LA Times. Black Lives Matter leader accused of stealing $10 million
Okay,
from
there
organization.
we go. Sure. That right there. So let's just pause there. And that's actually a separate one. That's
Yep,
not BLM Global Network.
Right.
But my guess is that somebody in a red state what's his name again? Is this the Global Network Foundation?
Shalomia Bowers.
Sure. Why is there not widespread investigations and indictments into the BLM charitable fraud? Now, that matters because if we want to have the promise of equal justice and the 14th Amendment, it's like, okay, you go after Donald Trump, who has become a martyr of the conservative right. There you go. Washington Examiner is a great site. So that's
BLM millions unaccounted for after leaders quietly jumped ship.
Yeah, so I deal in the 501c3 world. Every dollar is audited. Every dollar, we have an audit committee. We have a CFO. I can't even sign checks. It takes 2 people in the organization, right? We do 990s. We deal with the IRS. Very, very high standard of financial accountability at Turning Point USA. This here is outright charitable fraud. Now, why does this matter? Because the counter argument is, well, Charlie, that's just some charity. No. BLM was the kind of vehicle of choice for the activist left. So you go get Donald Trump in New York, then fine. We're going to go take BLM and put them on trial and go through the charitable fraud of how they raised $100 million and got $83 billion in pledges from corporate America. And where did the money go?
They got so much money.
That would be a prudent act of deterrence that would actually, I think, open up the legal conversation. And that's just one example of 100 that I think.
A few years ago, there were people telling me that what's happening today would never happen because the government would not allow it, that the government was secure, that the deep state apparatus, whatever you want to call it, does not allow these kinds of things because it's destabilizing.
What sort of things?
Like Trump being arrested, like J6,
people...
like BLM Summer of Love.
Who says that? Like
this was in 2018.
What are you reading, like cue boards or something?
No,
wait,
what? These were mainstream conservatives.
I've never heard that, but sure.
You've never heard people say that the country can't collapse?
No, I'm saying that Trump can't be indicted. Like I haven't heard that.
Yeah, so in 2018, the idea that Donald Trump would actually be impeached, they were like, they won't allow something like that to happen.
Okay, well, impeachment is different than indictment, but sure, continue. Yeah.
Well, but indictment wasn't even on the table. There wasn't even a criminal charges that were...
I think I misunderstood what you were saying.
In 2018, when I was talking about how we are heading towards a collapse or civil war, and again, I stress, I didn't make the idea. A Princeton professor was talking about the Cold Civil War. Numerous outlets were talking about it.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
People were saying that can never happen. The government is an entity in and of itself, the deep state. It will not lose control in that matter. It doesn't care about the left, doesn't care about the right.
Got it.
And now what are we seeing? As the years go on, the federal government is being bifurcated into mostly an establishment left and more new. There's no right.
There's no opposition.
There's no opposition. There is just the hyper-partisan, hyper-polarization of federal government. And so what we end up seeing today is Donald Trump just flew to New York to surrender on bogus criminal charges. There will be no opposition to that. This will get worse as the years go on. There is no reason to believe that these people in power are going to decide to pull things back.
So they don't have to.
Why would they? What is the mechanism by which they will say, hey, let's slow down here?
So the only way they stop is if we stop them. And so I agree. If the current trajectory continues, everything you just said will happen. I'm a big believer in free will and agency and the ability to do something. So I'm going to use my platform to call on what the only thing I think that could stop it, which is deterrence, which is to get DAs and AGs to indict Democrat crime member families. If we don't do that, everything you're saying is true.
But so my issue there is this country is so bifurcated. What you're describing would just be the exact same thing to them as it is to us.
Of course it is. It's equal and opposite reaction. You punch us, we punch you.
And then it escalates to further
So the question is this. What escalation is better than being pummeled?
Well, I
depends on how you escalate. If you're escalating it to end the problem, like
I'm trying to
quell the violence.
My heart is trying to calm down the temperature. My heart is saying we're not going to stop until you stop. And
the issue is
true. If you have a friend that smacks you a lot, and you're like, if you do that again, I'm going to smack you back. And then they do it again, and you smack it back. They stop.
That's deterrence.
But this is not. No, I completely disagree.
Fair
with
warning.
That.
You're like, what you're doing is wrong.
There's no friends.
I completely disagree. There's numerous examples throughout history where the pushback just led to an escalation until war broke out and people all killed each other. Right. We had a civil war in this country. They didn't just say, "Whoa, this violence is growing too much, guys. Let's agree to stop."
That's a good counter argument. No, Tim's counter argument is good.
And Sherman decided to march to the sea
rather savagely.
And savage is an understatement.
Yeah, it is.
He said, I got an idea. I'm so sick of these people. I'm going to burn their cities to the ground, kill children, and destroy farmland. all the way down so they starve and die.
Just watching the bombing of
the
Hiroshima,
advent
man.
of scorched earth warfare.
So then,
No, not the advent. It was just the first time in the United States
Yeah.
they did it.
Right, there you go. It was when I believe they coined scorched earth. Or something
So
like
let
that.
me just frame it, though, because I hate to reduce things to binaries, but the American right has a choice. Option one, keep doing what we are doing, which is to send strongly worded press releases and op-eds and hope things get better. Choice two, indict, use political power, and hope it gets better. They're both bad options.
I agree.
I like the
completely
whole
agree.
the forgiveness arc for Donald. Like, if you're really pummeled and beaten down by society so hard and you still stand up and forgive people for it, that's a message that will resonate for thousands of years.
I think that's powerful. Not going to happen.
It could.
I think
No, I
think
don't
they're
think
lying in
that's
the
gonna
polls
happen.
too. They're trying to make the argument that they want Trump to be the nominee so they can beat him in 2024.
But they didn't beat him last time. Well, I mean, they did beat him last
They
time.
beat him
but-
last time,
Well,
but they don't.
before that.
But they don't have anything right now. There's no one.
Hey.
Biden can't do it. Biden didn't campaign. He hid in his basement. There was a lockdown where mail-in ballots were sent to everyone's home.
I totally agree with you.
They don't have any of these tools. So unless H5N1 hits,
yeah.
and then they do another lockdown,
do
You mean
another
like a
lockdown.
swine flu 2.0 or something?
Biden is done.
Do you remember the town halls
look,
with people in their cars?
Right. Yes.
That was
the
so stupid.
Jeeps in front of the stage.
Yes.
Biden is a proven failure. The country is in shambles. That guy I mentioned who talked about executing J6ers also said it's Biden's fault the economy is bad.
Yeah, that's
So my point is just they can't try this game twice. And I do believe they're going to try. They're putting up polls where it's like, if an election was held today, Biden would win. DeSantis would beat Trump, but Biden, they're saying that DeSantis would beat Biden, and Trump would lose to Biden. And they're trying to make the case that we should support DeSantis for the primary. I think they are lying once again in the polls.
So can I validate what you're saying?
Yeah.
Can you go to a website? It's number 270towin.com. This is not
270
talk.
to win.
Yeah. This every 10 years we do a census as mandated by the Constitution. Most people don't know this, but the map has slightly changed in Trump and the Republican favor for the first time for 2024. So the maps are good for 3 cycles, and then you redo them. Good for 3 cycles. Actually, 2 cycles, redo them.
Well, wait, what do you mean? Right here it's saying.
Let me show you. Okay, so let's assume Texas goes red. Is that fair enough to say?
Oh,
Okay.
easily. And Florida.
Yep. Okay, let's assume Pennsylvania goes blue, please. And then
nice.
New Hampshire goes blue. And then
Oh, wow.
all of Maine goes blue.
Really?
Yeah, let
Yeah,
me show
I
you.
think
Michigan
Maine's
goes
blue,
blue.
too.
I know what I'm doing here. Yeah, so and Minnesota goes blue.
And Minnesota goes
And then
blue.
Nevada goes blue.
And Nevada goes blue.
Iowa goes red.
Iowa goes
And Ohio
oh,
goes red.
And Ohio goes
And North
red.
Carolina goes red. And that's okay. So what you have right here is why they fear Trump. All Trump has to do is win Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin, and he's the president of the United States. 3 states he won in 2016, 3 states that receive Zuckerberg money, 3 states that have elected statewide Republicans, and 3 states that have more 2 states that have more Republicans registered than Democrats in Georgia and Arizona, and 1 state that's 50-50. This is why the Democrats are indicting Trump. The map has changed. This was
So
not
if
the,
we-
this was not the map in 20 is what I'm telling you. It's
Are
a
we going to
different
say,
map.
so Nebraska had that one district, I turned it red.
Well, no, even if you don't, it goes 271.
Right. If
That's
it's
the point.
271 without
That's-
it, with it, it's 272.
Yeah, and so 270 to win is all you need. So the
if-
Democrats know this. So therefore, Donald Trump can't. Not only can he win the presidency, this map heavily favors the Republican to win the presidency.
This is
And-
interesting. Even so the only real consideration, I think, I don't even know if Arizona is necessarily. I'm not as worried about Arizona.
I live in Arizona.
Right.
It's a challenge.
You think so?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a 50-50 state. Sinema is going to be a formidable Senate candidate if she runs as an independent.
But that's good for Republicans.
It's good. I think Arizona, with the proper get out the vote ballot chasing operation, which we can talk about, is going to be fine. My philosophy, my hypothesis is the entire United States election comes down to 3 states, comes down to 7 counties. And this is why they fear Trump so much. This is not a national election. Mind you,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania's blue.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. In 2016, Trump won with, I think, 88,000 votes across was it 3 states.
But he needed a Michigan or a Pennsylvania
Right.
in addition to a Wisconsin because the census map favored the Democrats. Because of the Sun Belt surge, because Florida has gained population so significantly.
It's a red state.
Because Texas has, and New York and California and Illinois have lost population. The stars have aligned. where the Republican is now in a much easier spot to win the White House than ever before. You better believe Mark Elias knows this. That's why Elias and the National Democrats are not thrilled about this indictment. They're just saying, what are you doing to win those 3 states? What do you want to do to win those 3 states?
And this is helping him there.
Oh, yeah.
His polls have gone up.
Oh,
His
not only that,
fundraising has
but
gone
upper
up.
middle class white suburban voters are not thrilled about the idea of over prosecution because they kind of get what that means. That resonates. That's a Democrat base thing.
Let me tell you, the funny thing is this guy I'm talking to, who said execute the J6ers, which is insane to me, also said this country over prosecutes.
Well, so there you go.
And this is an interesting thing.
He sounds like a walking contradiction, aka a swing voter.
Absolutely, he was a PA swing voter.
Well, and so you look at it because people say, how do we win Michigan? How do we win Nevada? How do we win Pennsylvania? You don't need to. And so you look at the map, you then focus very precisely. There's not just a path. There is a great probability Trump becomes president.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.